Hello everyone, welcome to Risk Roundup. Crisis and catastrophe can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone. It strikes without any warning, it can occur in just very few seconds, are very personal. These attacks that happen are very personal and no one has any immunity from it. Anyone and everyone are under attack today. As a result, security is becoming a very complex challenge. Be it cyber attacks or terrorist attacks, natural disaster or man-made disaster, the time has come when everyone across nations need to evaluate how best to be prepared for attacks from all contested commons. Since nature of security is changing rapidly, everyone is accountable for their own security crisis and security risk. As a result, it is imperative that we all understand the importance of personal preparedness. Since personal preparedness lessens the impact on individuals, families, communities, and entities across nations, its government, industries, organizations, and academia. To discuss personal preparedness further, I'm delighted to welcome James A. DeMeo to Risk Roundup. James is a recognized cybersecurity and security professionals, and the Security Magazine has announced him as one of the most influential people in security in, I think, 2017, if I'm not wrong on that year. He's also the author of the best-selling book on family safety and preparedness entitled, What's Your Plan? It's a step-by-step guide to keep your family safe during emergency situations, any kind of emergency situation. So welcome, James. We're delighted to have you on Risk Roundup.
Delighted to be here as well. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Wonderful, James. So, irrespective of whether we are talking about the crisis originating from cyberspace or geospace, knowing what to do before, during, and after an attack is a critical plan of being prepared. So, from your assessment, what different attack variables that we need to be aware about today, irrespective of whether we are individuals or whether we are family or whether we are entities, small, medium, large?
Absolutely. Obviously, the challenges continue on a daily basis for security leaders. Having these collaborations give us the ability to share information, knowledge, and training, certainly within confined spaces. But looking at family preparedness, the ability to get out in front of challenges, knowing exactly what to do when faced with true emergency situations, again, tactically places families in a very good position to deal with these types of challenges. So, as you mentioned, certainly the ever-evolving threat continuum is ongoing, and it gives us, obviously, the ability to share information, to get out in front, and certainly having a proactive risk mitigation mindset places families in the best position possible to deal with these types of scenarios.
No, that's very true. And you made a good point that we have to share the information. And sharing that information, what exactly do you mean by that? I mean, sharing before, telling everyone where you are going to be, or if we are talking about event security, or, sharing information about our passwords or anything, if we are on internet, what kind of sharing information that you are recommending?
Well, certainly for families, understanding obviously knowing what they're going to do when they're in particular spaces. As an example, on a weekend, if you're going to your place of worship, is kind of creating a pre-planned response on what you would do if you were faced with an active shooter or an active assailant situation within your place of worship. If you're going to a stadium venue or arena on a weekend, as an example, knowing exactly what you would do, fully charged cell phones, special code word for your family, knowing exactly how you got into the venue, how you're going to get out, having a predetermined meeting place. And I always advise, obviously, if there is a true emergency situation, to follow law enforcement's guidance. But certainly, Doctor, we're seeing 2017 FBI stats talking about the first 10 to 15 minutes, active shooter situation, bad stuff is over before the good guys get on scene. Fast forward the clock to today, during this conversation, we're looking at a 5 to 7 to 9 minute window. Looking at corporate environments in 2018 FBI stats, we're talking about 60% of active assailant situations are happening within corporate settings. So the ability to have workplace violence preparedness training is important. And again, I wrote this book 2 years ago. People say to me, James, your book is ever so timely. And I say, in my security mind, it was timely 2 years ago when I wrote it. So having the ability to have these conversations, certainly getting past the fear factor, empowering families on knowing exactly what they're going to do when faced with true emergency situations. Again, that goes back to sharing information, So we work with our law enforcement partners, our JTTF, the marshals, the terrorism task force folks, but we also want the American public to see something, say something, run, hide, fight, but also have them have that ability to know what to do, again, when faced with these types of scenarios.
No, I think you made some really interesting point here, because it doesn't matter where you are going to be. It could be, at a sports arena, or a concert, or, place of worship, or even, in a business environment. You are just going to work, and you never know, what kind of crisis can, emerge there. So for each and every kind of place that you are going to be, or nature of event you are going to be in, you need to know what you are going to do to protect yourself, and to communicate, share that information. So as we are discussing, because there are so many different kind of attacks that can happen. You are just sitting on a computer doing your work, and someone could hack, and somebody could steal your passwords, and that could result into a very different kind of cyber attack, cyber ransomware, cyber kidnapping, cyber terrorism. All kinds of things happen. You are going to work, and if somebody is not happy, someone is getting fired, wants to get revenge, and he or she would start shooting, and at temple, all kinds of, we are listening to all these news emerging, all kinds of attacks are happening everywhere, and each of these attacks are, different, and it has, the nature of the attack is different. So for each type of attack, the preparation and communication strategy would be different, right? So how do you recommend everyone prepare for any and all kinds of attacks? Are there some basic, common preparations that were fitting for any kind of attack?
Again, as I mentioned earlier, as a family, if you're going to, a sporting event, to take a look at the chapter 1 as an example in my book talks about, again, knowing how you got into the venue, knowing exactly where your car or your vehicle is parked, seeing something that doesn't look right to you or out of the ordinary within that confined space. Terrorists look at choke points and bottlenecks, ingress points as you're entering the stadium, the ability, meaning stadium security, the ability to get folks within those spaces in a timely manner. So we want to look at interior perimeters, exterior perimeters, but it's that, obviously that partnership, that working relationship between the well-educated fan and the folks that are in charge with their duty of care that work within those confined spaces. Everyone speaking the same language in the interest of public safety and sharing information within a timely manner. So obviously, the world is conflicted. We look at 2020, we look at political instability in the US. We want to be mindful and cognizant of the lone wolf. We want to be mindful and cognizant of individuals that are disenfranchised. We look at the Vegas shooter, a black swan event. We look at the after action report. We see that there was over 600 radio transmissions. There wasn't enough paramedics, EMS for a mass casualty incident. So it's certainly a lessons learned, best practices viewpoint from first responders and security working within those spaces. And as I mentioned earlier, families understanding how to get past the fear factor, knowing exactly what they're going to do when faced with these types of scenarios. I really wish the two of us could say that these challenges are going away yesterday. Unfortunately, they're not. And we have to get out in front of these. And I always talk about education and knowledge as the antidote to fear. Fear is not an option, and it's simply not part of the equation. So when we have these, we have these collaborations. We talked before we went on the air here. I teach for Tulane University in the School of Professional Advancement through distance learning. I take great pride in training the future leaders that will go out and protect members of my family, your family. You're down in the Houston area. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. I take great pride in training these folks on these types of discussions on how they're going to lead people to safety during times of crisis. So again, it's ever evolving. Security is certainly needs to be looked at from an holistic standpoint, from the top to the bottom and vice versa. But again, key stakeholders, sharing information, team leaders within workplace environments, sharing information with one another. If somebody in your office environment is having a bad day, take it upon yourself to share that information with somebody in human resources, share that with contracted security, share that with folks within that space, and train. Because when we train consistently, what we do in a training scenario is how we're going to respond when confronted with a real life situation.
I think you made some really excellent points, because fear has absolutely no place in our life. We should be alert and we should fight back. We all have to think like soldiers. And we cannot allow anyone to create that kind of fear and panic scenario. So you are very, you're right on that. We all have to take control of our lives, and we have to be alert, we have to be vigilant, and we have to observe everything. So that observation skill, I think we have to start teaching children right from the elementary school. Families should, parents should teach their children, teachers should teach the kids in school that we have to observe everything wherever we enter. First thing is, we just take, scan the entire room and see what, if there is something that is out of place, and what we should be careful about. So there is a lot that needs to change culturally in education system, and even in how we raise our children. So that is, you have made some really good points here. So as you and I have been talking, we know that nobody is immune from these security threats. No matter how prepared anyone is, or how knowledgeable someone is, but anybody could face these kind of challenges, these kind of attacks. So how do we prepare? I mean, you have been telling that we all have to be prepared, we have to make communication plan, but are there any ready-made communication plan, or are there any made criteria or checklists that are available that families can use, businesses can use? Have you addressed that in your book?
I have actually, and unfortunately, so much has happened since 2017. People say to me, James, you should write another book. We look at the fires, we look at the earthquakes.
Yeah.
We look at, as you mentioned earlier, the challenges on our cyber and infrastructure. So certainly, there's a great deal of technology out there, AI, and certainly biometrics and iris scans, but we want to be cognizant of private data, privacy issues. But to answer your question, we really have to get past the fear, and the media does the best that they can to get the information out. I agree, when there's an active shooter situation, they don't want to name the shooter. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, when we look at post-Parkland, we look at the possibility of the media's overexposure to an incident. We look at the contagion or the copycat effect, the 13 days that follow an active shooter situation with the media's overexposure. Again, there could be somebody who's disenfranchised, who's fallen off the radar screen and wants to get attention for all the wrong reasons. So we have to find that balance. Some of my friends, they're ex-FBI agents, the smartest people you can imagine. They're on all the major news channels talking about motive. And you and I know, when people talk about motive, that means something tragic has already happened. That is a reactionary response to something that we need to get out in front of. So again, having these conversations, educating, empowering, getting past the fear factor, places is in a position of strength as opposed to vulnerability. So certainly moving forward, challenges continue on a daily basis. Again, I try to make every effort I can in a higher education vertical. I've been doing some training down here in Raleigh in terms of workplace violence, preparedness, and awareness training. But it's a combination of the cyber folks and the physical security folks sharing information, utilizing our resources. Again, as I mentioned earlier, FBI, DHS, Secret Service, obviously fusion centers, but it's those public-private partnerships that are so important, to share that information with the public, but also the public doing their homework, doing their due diligence, and knowing exactly what they're going to do when they're out in these places. Again, places them in a good position to not have fear, but rather to be empowered during times of crisis.
Sure, and I hear you, and like you said, things are changing on a daily basis. We are having more cyber bullets, cyber attacks coming from, cyberspace than we are having actual, bullets that we will see in geospace. So, we see so many kinds of crimes happening, cyber kidnapping and cyber, people's data just get locked, and, they are asked for ransomware and all that. So, you are recommending that we should, share the information with all these law enforcement officials, but we don't have any structured system or framework by which it's easy for anybody to just share the information quickly. What can they do? Should they call 911 to share the information, or what kind of infrastructure we have, digital or any other kind of infrastructure which everyone can use to quickly share the information? Because I just don't see that kind of system.
Well, certainly it's a challenge, but see something, say something. So we want to make sure that obviously families have that situational awareness. They're paying attention to the world around them at all times. We know, as much as we love technology, technology is how we're communicating right now. It could also be a disadvantage if we're looking at our smartphones and we're desensitized to the world around us. In 2017, my book is based on the premise of something that my son said to me when the lights went out in the mall in Durham, North Carolina. That was the impetus, for me to write this book, because when the lights went out, what was everybody doing, doctor? They were looking down at their smartphones, completely desensitized to the world around them. In those kinds of scenarios, someone could pull the fire alarm. Someone could actually, and as you're exiting with that crowd mentality, you could literally run right into an active shooter situation. So it could be a series of events, not just run, hide, fight, but it could be a series of events that factor into, obviously a situation where, you're confronted with these challenges. So again, we want to be cognizant of sharing information. We want to share information in a timely manner. Again, people say to me, James, is it 1, 2, 3, run, hide, fight? You could actually follow those steps, and in a fight scenario, you could be confronted with the shooter directly head on. So you want to know what you're going to do before that kind of situation happens. Again, wherever you find yourself, and again, confined spaces are very, very concerning because we have a lot of people in a densely populated area, and we have to remember, especially in stadiums, that on exterior perimeters, they flow into entertainment zones. So we have mass transportation hubs. When I opened the Barclays Center with AEG in 2012, you can imagine 18,000 people coming out of the venue and then going into a mass transportation hub. So we want to be mindful of, bomb threats and drones and chemical and radiological, biological agents being dispersed within confined spaces. Again, a lot of people in a densely populated area, if these folks don't know what to do, or the folks that are entrusted with their safety don't know how to lead them to a safe place in a timely manner, that's when we can have a crowd crush. That's when we can have a situation that becomes obviously dangerous for many people within that space.
Sure. No, I hear you. And if you remember a few months back, I think last year I had reached out to you after that event in Las Vegas, that why are law enforcement or FBI, why are they not coming up with a application or a system, by which if there is an active shooting going on like this, at any event, then, just guiding people where to go, how to go, so that it's easier, because most of the people are not aware of what to do. They start running around. They just don't know how to protect themselves during that active shootout. So I think law enforcement, irrespective of whether it's cops or FBI or intelligence agencies, I think they need to work together and come up with some effective applications, framework, structured system where they can make this easier for people, because they have to guide, they have to take a lead here. If they come up with good applications, and I'm sure it's not hard for with the resources they have to come up with an application like that, that any event is happening, first time someone mentions on Twitter that this is happening, they should quickly reach, start sending out the messages that this is what you should do, stay calm, don't be afraid, start taking these steps. It makes it so much easier. And we are just talking about these events right now, but we have to do the same thing for cyberspace also, because all these different kinds of cyber attacks, people are not used to what to do, and they every day, like we have been talking, the attacks and the nature of attack and form of attack is changing. So people just don't know what to do, irrespective of whether they are seasoned professional. So I think agencies, law enforcement agencies, have to take a bigger role here. So I hope that they listen to this and they come up with some effective way to create a platform and prepare and integrate it with everyone, so that it's easier for individuals or anybody who is attending this kind of event, or if you are in home also, if you are under attack, what to do. That is something that education is necessary. So do you see any initiative like that is in plan?
Well, again, I certainly respect your opinion. I spent 21 years in law enforcement, even though I retired in 2011, transitioning now as a consultant, as a subject matter expert. Law enforcement also needs our help. They need security leaders, they need families, because we could have the biggest law enforcement agency in the country that's the combination of public-private partnerships. Sure. We have contract security, so they do the best they can with the resources that they do have. They're under a tremendous amount of stress. They're having retention and issues, obviously, But it's those public-private partnerships. It's sharing the information. Again, everybody working together. I always say about stadiums, an educated fan is a safe fan. If the fans look at the codes of conduct, you mentioned earlier, mass notifications via, Twitter and things like that, but having, SMS text messages, sharing that information. I teach for Tulane. Even though I work remotely in Raleigh, I get text messages when they have inclement weather. So it's very, very important, even though I'm not physically on campus, that I'm part of their communications network if there's inclement and severe weather. So certainly as we head in, obviously we're in July now, but we get into August, September, October, we look at severe weather and we utilize technology, right, in terms of sharing information in those types of scenarios. So again, I respect your point, but at the same time, I know that law enforcement is having a tough time, doing what they can do. They do put out a lot of fires for us with these, fusion centers, but we also need to take it upon ourselves if we see something that looks out of the ordinary. Even if we're a parent and one of our children is having a difficult time and they're attending a local university, as what happened here recently at North Carolina State University, as an example. One of the students was having a difficult time. The mother had contacted campus police and they were able to, go to the student's car and they found kind of an arsenal of weapons. Thank goodness mom came forward and shared that information, because again, that could be a situation where if mom doesn't make that phone call, we could have an active situation on that campus. We had a shooting at UNC Charlotte just recently. So regardless of the vertical that we're entrusted to protect, again, it could be higher education, it could be places of worship. As you mentioned earlier, your background in cyber, we get into the hotter and colder months. We have to be cognizant of, facilities related issues, brownouts. Just last week, they had a blackout in New York City. So again, when you're in these, obviously these densely populated metropolitan areas, how that's going to affect, obviously railways and airports and drones, as an example, errant drones. So the constant ebb and flow, it's ever evolving, as I've mentioned. So I think it's just the American public coming together. Unfortunately, we have these discussions after really tragic things happen. So if we can share the information, get out in front, the world is contentious. People want to express their opinions. If there's an active shooter situation, people talk about gun control. They talk about mental health, and people want to be right for their own individual reasons. And I respect their opinions, but at the same time, if we're too busy pointing fingers at one another and not coming up with tangible, concrete solutions to eradicate these problems, again, they're going to continue to happen. So these kinds of conversations, getting out, training, proactive risk mitigation, tabletop exercises, simulations, the public becoming more aware of their immediate surroundings when they're out in public places, joint, partnerships between law enforcement, obviously, the feds, and also the American public, sharing information, again, working things out in a timely manner, gets us all on the same page to best deal with these types of challenges.
Absolutely. Everyone has to collaborate. There is no doubt about that. And that is, I think the social media is playing an important role here, which is they are giving us a platform that everyone can communicate, share. I mean, irrespective of whether it's Facebook or Twitter, that is helpful, and individuals are able to share and communicate in real time. So that is a good, thing. And here, I hear you on that, law enforcement and everybody is overwhelmed right now. It's too much going on and nobody has enough resources. So yes, it is a challenge, but I think, it is time, as the nature of challenges becomes more and more complex, we'll have to come together and put together a structured, framework and effort, which would make it easier. Once we have everything defined properly and we have effective processes, I think it will become easier for everyone, individuals as well as, law enforcement. And as we have been talking since the beginning, that yes, public-private partnership is absolutely essential. We all have responsibility for our own security. So we cannot just depend that, yes, law enforcement will take care of this, if something happens. That we no longer live in that kind of society where, they will be able to take care of all the problems, because the number of problems are so many and the number of law enforcement officials are not that many. So yes, we all have to do our part. And I'm glad that you are, doing your part by writing the books, by creating education awareness, by teaching. So having said that, what would you like to tell our global viewers and listeners about your new book? What's your plan, and where can they, buy it? And if you are writing any other books, if you want to share any other information.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to go back to one thing also. Let's be cognizant of the fact that the bad actors, the unscrupulous actors, are also doing, their reconnaissance. They're doing their homework, and they're seeing exactly how long it's taking for law enforcement to get down on the scene. So they're on the outside looking in, and they're studying everything, trying to counteract our initiatives, things that we're doing right now. So we need to be mindful that they're studying and they're planning, and not to be fearful of that, but to be cognizant of the fact that just as we're doing our homework, they're doing their homework. So, if the American public can kind of get up to speed in terms of what they need to do, places them in a good position. Again, thank you regarding the book. It's become a bestseller, certainly with your help. We reach a larger audience. I've been out in Las Vegas and Charlotte. I've been in New York talking about the book. People say to me, James, you should write another book. That's very, very encouraging. But at the same time, this is just one part of one piece of the puzzle, if you will. It's 82 pages long. It's a bestseller. It's What's Your Plan? Again, a step-by-step guide to keep your family safe during emergency situations. We're on Amazon. We're on Goodreads. We're on consignment here in the Raleigh area. But I'm going to continue to do my part with leaders like yourself, trying to get this message to the national media about the importance. Again, we understand motive, but let's get past that conversation. Let's talk about education and empowerment and awareness. Let's get the American public on board with this kind of conversation, not only here, but also on a national level on what they're going to do when faced with a true emergency situation. So again, we're on Amazon, jamesademeo.com. It's a terrific conversation. Certainly really like what you're doing in the Houston area. I'm here in Raleigh, but certainly effective communications, collaborations, getting past the fear factor, continuing to learn, lessons learned, best practices, sharing information, obviously with our partners in the security industry. Again, I'm working with higher education. Distance learning is a big way now that we're getting that message out. But, the ability to have these conversations, to educate, to know exactly what we're going to do, again, places us in a good position. So I'm honored to have this conversation with you yet one more time. Here we are a year or two later. Unfortunately, things have gotten a lot worse, but when we utilize technology to our advantage, when we utilize, the ability to, share information with key stakeholders, again, IT, physical security, access controls, CC television, there is just so much. You and I know there's so much out there. I had 2 conversations this morning, again, with artificial intelligence, certainly biometrics, as I mentioned earlier, iris scans, fast pass lanes, which they're using within stadiums, venues, and arenas at the professional levels, again, to push folks through safely and expeditiously to prevent those choke points and bottlenecks, and also remembering on the egress when fans do leave on how to have them safely exit, within a timely manner. So certainly honored to have your trust and confidence. Looking forward to continued collaborations. Again, it's What's Your Plan? It's 8 chapters long. It covers all 8 multiple security verticals, but it's written for families, not so much for security practitioners. It's written for moms and dads and families on knowing exactly what they're going to do, places of worship, sporting venues. Again, obviously, you're at the mall. It could be a carnival, a festival, wherever you find yourself in your family. Going over the exercise action list. There's a glossary in the back that gives you some of the terms that we're talking about now to kind of break it down for families on, getting their education up to speed in terms of their own situational awareness on what they're going to do when faced with true emergency situations.
Yes, absolutely. And that is a great advice, James. Thank you so much. So Risk Roundup, a global initiative launched by Risk Group, is a security risk reporting for risk emerging from existing and emerging technologies, technology conversions and transformation happening across cyberspace, aquaspace, geospace, and space. We at Risk Group believe that risk management, security, and peace, they walk together hand in hand. Though security is related to management of threats and peace to the management of conflict, risk management is related to management of security vulnerabilities as well as management of conflict. And it is not possible to conceive any one of the 3 without the existence of the other 2. All 3 concepts feed into each other. We believe that the security we build for ourselves is precarious and uncertain. until it is secure for everyone across nations. Tradition becomes our security. So, if we build a culture of managing risk effectively, it will lead us to security, and security will lead us to peace. Let's manage the existing and emerging risks together. For more information on the risk roundups, to watch the risk roundup video or your podcast, please go to riskgroupllc.com and do not forget to subscribe and share. Until next time, I'm Jayashree, host of Risk Roundup, signing off. See you next time. Thank you.